There's two big headlines out there right now. Liverpool in advanced talks with Frankfurt for Hugo Ekitike. Then on the other side of it, you've got Newcastle United eyeing up another move for Brentford's Wissa. But it's the third headline that doesn't really exist that I like, which is Newcastle United are keeping a hold of Alexander Isak for next season. We're going to be discussing those two transfer stories, taking a look at Brentford's pursuit of Amadi Hutchinson, as well as what's going on with Leeds United's midfield. Big moves for them. But if you're new to the Tartan YouTube channel, please do subscribe. Also drop a like on it by clicking the thumbs up button. Getting close to 4,500 subscribers. It's getting exciting. I'm going to look forward to hitting that 5,000 subscribers. It'll be round about the start of the season, so that'll be good. But anyway, massive thank you for all the support recently. Right then, let's start with Ekitike. So Liverpool, they're in advanced talks with Frankfurt over him. Newcastle had their bid rejected earlier this week of €75 million. They've decided not to pursue Ekitike any longer. That could be as a result of either A, they know Liverpool aren't going to go in for Isak because the reports were they were going to inquire, and Newcastle said no, they weren't then going to launch an official bid. So I'm just going to assume that's what's happened here, that Newcastle have stuck to their stance, which is we are not selling. We want Isak and Ekitike next season. As a result of that, Liverpool have gone away. They've gone after their second choice target, which is Hugo Ekitike. And as a result of that, Newcastle have decided, right, let's not pursue him because he apparently prefers Liverpool over Newcastle and Man United. And because of that, now Newcastle are weighing up a move for Brentford's Wissa. You following me? It's a little love triangle thing going on here. But I think this is good news. I think this is good news for Newcastle. I would argue it's good news for Liverpool as well. For sure, they're not getting their number one target. But what they are getting is their second choice striker target, who's still a very, very good option. Not as good as Isak, but a very, very good option. I think you can take a bit of comfort that Newcastle had identified him as Isak's long-term replacement. Are they buying baby Isak? Possibly, but he looks like he might be going to Anfield after all. For Newcastle Wissa, the price tag I've seen banded around is very, very chunky. 50 million. It also feels very unrealistic unless something drastic changes with Wissa and Brentford, because right now he's only got 1 year left on his contract, turns 29 in September, so he's no spring chicken. This is a guy that's ready to deliver for Newcastle immediately, and I think Newcastle needs some of those players. I think some clubs are in a position where they perhaps don't need to go after established first team players. They can go after the younger ones, a bit of the project, and then in a couple of years' time they're ready to knock whoever it is out of the team. That is not Wissa. They're not buying a project or someone for the future. They're buying someone that's going to contribute immediately at St James's Park next season. And I think they need a couple of those players. I don't think they're quite there yet in terms of squad depth, Newcastle, where they can only focus on youngsters. I think they've got to do a bit of a balance, but really make sure that they improve the first 11, and as a result, the bench improves as well. I think Wissa would do that. Is Wissa better than Callum Wilson? Because essentially, that's who he's replacing. Yes. Is he better than Osula at this moment in time? Yes, absolutely. Is he as good as Isak? No. But that's okay, because they need another striker capable of scoring goals and leading the line as and when Isak is unavailable, needs a rest, they're chasing a goal, they can put two strikers on. They need a striker. But 50 million is very, very expensive for someone that will be turning 29 shortly, plus his contract situation. I understand Brentford's stance, and I will always defend the selling club. Is Wissa worth 50 million to Newcastle? No, but that's what he's worth to Brentford. So they're well within their right to demand what they want. It's their player. Sometimes I think there's this perception that, hey, you should sell him cheap. They don't have to sell him cheap. But they do need to take into consideration he's only got a year left on his contract. Brentford cannot let him leave on a free next summer. It just does not fit with the Brentford model, who are incredibly well run, who are fantastic in the transfer window. Selling a player who's away to turn 29 with 1 year left on his contract for a lot of money, and we'll debate this in a second, is what I consider to be a good transfer business. The problem is it puts pressure on them. Now, apparently Brentford are trying to wait and see what happens with Mbeumo going to Man United before deciding for Wissa. That makes sense. If they don't sell Mbeumo, then you can sell Wissa. You've got Shada and Mbeumo. Igor Thiago's back from injury as well, so you would need to replace Wissa. But they've already got a new striker there. That cost them a lot of money we've just not seen yet due to injury. That's significant. Thiago returning from injury is huge. But I also can understand if Mbeumo goes for 65 million or something, and there's supposedly a valuation problem again where Brentford are looking for 70 million, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe isn't too keen to go up to that price. For me, price tag, anything over 30 million is a bit too expensive, I think. For Newcastle, not for Brentford. I think anything less than that, it's still expensive. But you're buying, I think with Wissa, you're buying success. You're buying a guy that you know will deliver. The way that Brentford played, it's not 100% dissimilar to the way that Eddie Howe plays with that counter-attacking, fast-paced attack. Wissa's used to that. Wissa's played like that. I think this would be a good sign. It's one that I feel is realistic as well. What would I think the overall transfer fee would be if this deal was to happen? 20-something million. I'd be surprised if Brentford managed to hold out and get 50 million. No one's going to pay 50 million, but I guess that's the point. They don't want to sell him. Right, moving on to Brentford itself. Amadi Hutchinson. I mean, sometimes I upload these videos an hour later, the news has changed. So sometimes I edit it, save it, upload it, do the thumbnail. By the time I put it up, there's been an update on the news and people saying, this is a bit old. When I'm recording, this is the latest, right? And I was a bit like that with Hutchinson yesterday because I believed that Brentford had triggered the release clause of 35 million for Amadi Hutchinson. Well, turns out it hasn't. Turns out that release clause expired at 5 p.m. on Tuesday night. 35 million. Brentford bid 35 million. However, the structure that Brentford offered wasn't enough to trigger the release clause. And this is, I think, one of the lesser known things in football, if you like. If a player has a release clause in their contract, let's take Hutchinson, 35 million, it's not expected that a club's going to rock up and pay 35 million in one go and that's it. Obviously, if they offered that, it would get triggered because it would meet the structure. But within the minimum fee release clause between the player and Ipswich in this case, a structure will have been agreed so that if a club comes in and let's just say bids 20 million up front, 10 million the next summer, 5 million the next summer, so it's paid up in 3 years, that's what a club would be required to bid. If they bid that, it gets triggered. And this is why Nottingham Forest have an issue with Spurs and Morgan Gibbs-White. Because Morgan Gibbs-White's release clause of 60 million, it's not just the fact that Spurs made a bid worth 60 million. It's the fact that Spurs bid exactly, reportedly, exactly what was required to trigger the release clause. So Nottingham Forest stance is, well, how do you know about that? How do you know exactly what to bid? Someone's told you, and nobody should be telling you because it's confidential. There's NDAs signed to prevent this information from getting out there. Now, clearly, Brentford didn't do a Spurs. Brentford didn't know exactly what or how to bid for Amadi Hutchinson, so the release clause wasn't activated in the end. Ipswich have rejected it, and they want to keep a hold of him. If Brentford are serious about Amadi Hutchinson, you'd imagine they'd be able to get a deal done. If Ipswich are serious and they keep a hold of Amadi Hutchinson, that would be very, very impressive, and I think that would be... It's relevant, isn't it? So Newcastle holding on to Isak is fantastic and it's a statement. I think Ipswich holding on to Hutchinson is on a similar level. It's just relevant. It's a championship club holding on to a player that someone's bidding 35, 40 million for and keeping him for the season at least. That's a statement by Ipswich, and that's a sign of a club in a really good position that they can afford to reject those bids despite having been relegated. I think Newcastle holding on to Isak superb because they can't replace him. Newcastle cannot replace Isak like for like. There isn't a striker they could sign, in my opinion, better than Alexander Isak. He doesn't exist. He's one of the best strikers in the world. They could improve their squad. Sell Isak, sign Ekitike, sign Mark Gay, sign James Trafford. Squad improves with the entire Isak transfer fee. But that's not what's happening here. They're keeping one of the best strikers in the world. And there was a few Newcastle fans in the comments yesterday of the video did which said, we might not be Liverpool's rivals yet, but we want to be, so we can't sell to Liverpool. I love it. Love that attitude. Love the attitude that Newcastle have shown by keeping Alexander Isak. And I like the attitude that Ipswich are showing by trying to keep a hold of Amadi Hutchinson. Still unsure they'll be able to, because if Brentford are serious and they get that 65 million for Mbomo, they can then afford Hutchinson, can't they? They're just going to have to pay more than the release clause, because Ipswich now can demand what they want, because that clause has expired. Now, Leeds United, they're signing one of Newcastle United's players, Sean Longstaff, medical booked in, I think it's today. £12 million deal. Good signing. I've covered it previously on the channel. I think it's a really good signing for Leeds. I think they're getting a player that works incredibly hard, has a lot of talent. He's just unlucky to be at Newcastle in this period when his competition is Bruno Guimaraes, Tonali and Yolinton, and then he's got the players like Lewis Miley and Willock as well. If he was at Newcastle a few years earlier, he'd go on to have, possibly he'd end up only playing for Newcastle. It's just that, unfortunately, it coincides with Newcastle being filthy rich and becoming successful, and he's worth a lot of money for when it comes to PSR purposes. He's pure profit. So unfortunately, he's an attractive player to sell. But I think this is a very clever signing by Leeds United with Sean Longstaff. But that's not the only midfielder they're signing. Anton Stach, they're signing as well from Hoffenheim. £20 million. I like him. Pure defensive midfielder, a proper number 6. Defensive midfielder in the Bundesliga. Has played centre-back of a back 3 as well. And I think that's what Leeds are buying. Someone that can drop a little bit deeper, pick the ball up, travel with it into midfield, but he will sit there in front of that defence. This is not, in my opinion, this is not a box-to-box midfielder or anything like that. Maybe that's how they'll try and utilise Longstaff as and when, but they've got good options in the middle of the park, Leeds. I think Stack is an upgrade on what they've already got. I like him. Good age. I think he's 26. Really good age, good experience. Ball-winning midfielder, decent in possession. He's not going to be racking up assists or anything like that, but moving the ball from the middle third to the final third, getting it to the attacking players, he's more than capable. I think he's strong in the air. There's a lot to like about him as a player, and I like a lot about this as a transfer for Leeds. I do wonder if maybe they're just going to change how the central midfield operates compared to last season at Leeds, where they would have one sitting and one sort of really getting a proper number 8, getting up the pitch a lot. I do wonder if maybe you're going to see a slightly more reserved pairing, a bit more of a double pivot rather than just that one anchor in midfield, which would make sense considering they're stepping up to the Premier League. But I rate that transfer, and I rate Longstaff as well. I think they're picking up 2 good midfielders, and they've already got, in particular, one midfielder I really like at Leeds United. That's that area of the pitch. I'm still looking at their front line, Leeds, thinking they need investment in that area of the pitch, but there's plenty of time to get that done. But as far as I'm concerned, once Stack and Longstaff arrive, that's the middle of the pitch sorted for them. It's impressive. Two really, really good signings. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'll be back tomorrow, and I am going to be discussing whatever the latest news is, plus Granit Xhaka potentially going to Sunderland. I love it.